Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about Season 15. Now, we talked a lot about the actual upcoming box set in the collection, but let's talk about Season 15 itself. It is, of course, a Tom Baker season, the Fourth Doctor, my favorite era of the show. Well, really the 70s as a whole is my favorite era, because I love the Pertwee era as well. Now, Season 15 is actually my least favorite Tom season, but it's still a Tom season, and they're all good. There's no bad Tom season. The stories vary drastically. They vary drastically in, one, how good they are, and two, in tone. It really is kind of a not branching, that's not the word I'm looking for, kind of a transitional point between the Hinchcliffe era and the Williams era, even though it is, of course, a Williams season. Some of the stories do feel like they come straight out of the Hinchcliffe era, most notably Horror of Fang Rock and Image of the Findal, where other stories, of course, especially once Anthony Reed takes over, have a different feel to them and feel more like what we typically consider to be the Williams era. Now, the best story of the season is the opener, Horror of Fang Rock. I love Horror of Fang Rock. I think Ham will back me on this one. It is a phenomenally well-written story, a well-directed story, a well-executed story, and has a fantastic cast in it. Even though some of the characters in it the guest characters don't really get fleshed out as much as maybe you'd like, you still understand what drives them. They're perhaps, you could argue they're a little two-dimensional, but I still feel like they're performed and acted very well. Horror of Fang Rock is definitely one of those stories that remind you that people die in Doctor Who. I love the interior. I love the sets. I love the atmosphere of it. I love the creeping nature of it, that sense of something is coming to get you. And I love that even though some of it takes place outside, since they're on an island, it has this base under siege feel to it where there's no way to escape. You know, the Doctor's line about, you know, I thought I locked it out, but I've locked it inside with us. That's a wonderful, I believe that's a cliffhanger. That is a wonderful line, a wonderful cliffhanger. I really like the guy who plays Reuben in it a lot. You know, pre-death and post-death Reuben, you know what I mean. He's just really good. He's also an Enemy of the World, I believe. It's a really good story. I'm really looking forward to the updated effects for it. It is the story I wanted to get updated effects. And just from the brief images we got, they look like pretty good quality of life updated effects. Like, they look like they put some budget into it, which I really like. The Invisible Enemy is not one I'm overly fond of. It's one of my least favorite Tom stories. It's when I ranked the Tom Baker era, the Fourth Doctor era, it was very low on the list, very low. Not quite Kroll low, but almost. It was very low. I don't get into it much. I feel like it's more famous for being K9's first story, which it excels at that. And I do really like the guy playing K9's inventor, who's also in other stories of Classic Who. He's really good. I like them. And then, of course, it's also got the one actor who also plays Scarman's brother in Pyramids of Mars. I guess so he's also a Scarman, I suppose. And then also plays in Remembrance of the Daleks. I like him a lot, so it's nice to see him in here. Just overall, I don't get into this one. The updated effects for it are nice. The Invisible Enemy does have updated effects on its DVD release, which I'm sure will be carried over to the Blu-ray. And they're nice. They do add to the story. I prefer it with the updated effects. But just not one story-wise that ever really grabbed me, and the execution of it's kind of ho-hum for me. So not one I really get into. And then we have Image of the Findal, which I like. Now, I watched that recently for the first time in a long time. It's only the second or third time I'd seen it. And the first time in a long time. It is good, but there's something disappointing about it. I can't quite lay my finger on it. I talked about this in my reviews of it. Like, episode 1 is really good. I think episode 4 was really good. I think it's the 2 middling episodes, which is something that will come up again in this video. The 2 middling episodes, I think something about them was a little disappointing. I forget exactly what I said in those reviews. But it has a great atmosphere to it, and I love the actual story of the Findal creature and what it is and how it operates, and the effect of the skull and it glowing, and even Tom being, ha! Over it. That I really like. Some of the execution of it doesn't quite work. The Findle's final form works in some shots, doesn't work in others. The Findle monster creature that's behind her doesn't quite work. It's not the worst Classic Who monster, but it's still a little... I'm pretty forgiving because I love Classic Who, but that is one of those cases where I'm kind of like... for some reason, the sum just isn't as good. The whole just isn't as good as the sum of its parts. Is that what I'm trying to say? It's good, but somehow disappointing. Then we have the Sunmakers, which I love the Sunmakers. It's Bob Holmes. You guys know I love Bob Holmes. He's the best writer the show's ever had. Not to say he's perfect. He also wrote Power of Kroll, which, to be fair, Power of Kroll has a nice script. It's not the script that's the problem with Power of Kroll. But I enjoy this one. I love the satire. I respect well-done satire, which I get is hard to do in 2024. Just because of the way the world is and the fact I don't think some younger people quite get the proper grasp of how satire works. Some. Which, again, considering the world they're growing up in, I actually think that's understandable. But this is satire done right, especially when you take into account the high cost of everything in the 70s and the high taxes of the 70s, which, from what I gather, in the UK, but also the problems we were having here in the US, which is something I think we can relate to right now with how the 2020s have gone with inflation and taxes, etc. Don't even get me started on what the housing market is in the US right now with its 22-year high interest rates and $160 a square foot, and that's in Mississippi. Mississippi. So this is a story that I think you can really connect to the point of it and the satire of it really well in 2024. I like the story itself. I like the set design. I like Leela in it. I like K9 in it. I like Tom Baker in it. I like the guest cast in it. I enjoy it. It's just a clever done story that holds up really well in 2024. Then you have Underworld, easily the most underrated story of the season. Underworld gets a lot of flack for its bad special effects, which is incorrect. It gets a lot of flack because some of the CSO work looks bad, and some of the CSO work does look bad. Now, one of the episodes actually has some pretty decent CSO work, especially considering the budget they had to work with and the fact it's 1978. It suffers a little bit because Star Wars had just come out and you can't make Doctor Who, 70s Doctor Who look like Star Wars. You just can't. But the CSO work, like in episode 2, I don't think it's bad. I think it's episode 3 when the director just gave up. The CSO work looks really bad in episode 3. That being said, the model work, especially in episodes 1 and 4, is phenomenal. It's really good, especially by classic Doctor Who standards. It's some of the best model work in classic Doctor Who. It's actually pretty impressive. I constantly say Underworld does not need updated effects. It needs some CSO cleanup, but the actual model work doesn't need any updated effects. It works well. Even when they're in the interior of the ship, raising and lowering that blast shield looks fine. Nothing wrong with it. The actual story I like. Underworld, much like Image of the Findal, has a really good first episode, a really good fourth episode, and then a middle episodes. Episodes 2 and 3 are the weak part of the story, to be fair. Episodes 1 and 4 are both really strong in the way they're executed and in the story itself. But I actually enjoy the story. I love what's going on. I love how it expands on Time Lord lore and explains why they have their non-interference policy. And explains why back way in the past they used to get involved and fight like vampires and stuff, and kind of why they don't now. And the way Tom Baker explains that, while being serious, still has that kind of Tom Baker humor to it that I like. Where he says it to where it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not. The way it's done, because Tom's just such a good actor. The actual story is really, really good and very underrated. And then we end with The Invisible Enemy, which is not that good. Not The Invisible Enemy. I keep mixing some of these stories up. The Invasion of Time, excuse me, which is not that good. The Invasion of Time Also ranked very low when I was ranking the 4th Doctor era. It ranked close to the bottom. It's just, especially for a season finale, it's very anticlimactic. There's a lot going on in it. And it's nice to see, I guess, the Doctor back on Gallifrey. But it's one of those times where I really have a problem overlooking the lack of budget. Again, it's classic Doctor Who. You just take classic Doctor Who for what it is. Usually the cheap effects do not bother me. I grew up with classic Doctor Who. I'm used to it. This is one of those times where the lack of budget, even for me, causes problems. Whether you're looking at some of the set design, or especially the TARDIS interiors really pull me out of it, because you can tell that's not the TARDIS interior. I mean, they're just walking around like an old abandoned hospital, and it's, ooh, it's bad. Yeah, and then Leela's departure is just so bad. The effects of the Vardens with the little tinsel, ooh. Now, I do enjoy when the Sontarans show up, although the Sontaran makeup also looks bad. That's probably my least favorite looking Sontarans we've ever had, with their helmets off. It looks bad. But it's nice to see them. I love the cliffhanger when they show up. I think it's the end of episode 4 when the one just pulls out his gun. That's a great cliffhanger. The updated effects. I haven't watched it with the updated effects. This one did get updated effects for its DVD release. I have seen the updated effects on YouTube, but I've never watched the whole story with them. I will probably rewatch the story when the box set comes out with the updated effects so I can do a review for it. They do look better. I think they do improve the story, and I'll have a better appreciation for it than I do now, but it's still one of my least favorite Tom stories. So season 15 is very much a mixed bag for me. You have one masterpiece in Horror of Fang Rock. You have another really good one in The Sunmakers. You have one that's good but a little disappointing in Image of the Fendal. You have one that's vastly underrated but still not perfect by any means in Underworld. And then you have two not really that interesting stories in The Invisible Enemy and The Invasion of Time. Still some interesting things happening in them, but not really that great. Two of Tom's weakest stories, in my opinion. So this season does end up being my least favorite, because season 16, I feel, is a little stronger. It has two bangers of a story in it with Ribos Operation and Pirate Planet. I like the Stones of Blood. I find Armageddon Factor to be vastly underrated in a good finale, considerably better than The Invasion of Time. Androids of Tara, I flip back and forth on depending on which watch through, but I still like it regardless. I love Romana's outfit. It's always going to get points for that purple outfit. I love it. Really, the only weak point being Power of Krull, which, to be fair, is watchable. Power of Krull, after watching a reactor react to it not too long ago, it's watchable. It's not great, but it's watchable. And then I enjoy season 17. I don't think season 17 really has any bad stories. I like all of them for one reason or another. So going in the Williams era, season 15 is really the only one that's kind of middle of the road for me, while still being a good season. It's just kind of my least favorite Tom season. So I want to know what you think of season 15 as a whole. Comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There are links to that down in the description as well. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Finn Perkins, Colin Coney, and Stephen Crane. I appreciate their support as I do the support of all of my patrons. It does make a difference, and it is appreciated. My P.O. box is down there if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review, Doctor Who related or otherwise. YouTube memberships are available, and links to my Amazon wish list are also down there. Most importantly, thank you for watching. Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today I just want to talk about Season 15. Now, I've done a couple videos talking about the actual collection box set, but let's talk about Season 15 itself. Let's talk about Season 15 itself.